What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV. Welcome back to another preview stream for you guys today in anticipation for the big game against Newcastle at St James's Park on Sunday. But there has been some breaking news early this morning, so we are a bit late to the party. But Fabio Paratici has resigned from his post at Tottenham Hotspur. We brought you the news yesterday saying we are expecting the outcome of the appeal, Fabio Paratici's appeal, and that did come last night, saying that, well, I'll read you the statement. It said, Juventus have 15-point penalties suspended and move up to third in Serie A pending a new hearing, and the appeals of Agnelli, Paratici, Cherubini and Avriabeni were rejected. The appeals of Nedved and all the former members of the board of directors were accepted. So Juve got their 15 points back. Paratici, Agnelli and the two others' appeals were rejected, and Nedved is in the clear with some other board of directors. Di Marzio broke this morning saying last night saying the College of Guarantee of Sport have rejected the appeal of Paratici. Ali Gold chimed in and said the same thing pretty much, saying Paratici's appeal against his 2.5-year ban extended globally by FIFA has been rejected. Then we had a club statement this morning. I was expecting it actually late last night, but it did come this morning, and it says the current worldwide ban prevents Fabio from fulfilling his duties as managing director of football. Fabio has consequently taken the decision to resign from his position at the club with immediate effect to focus on his legal position in respect of the FIGC and FIFA rulings. Daniel Levy said that this has been a stressful time for Fabio and his family. We wanted to ensure that we allowed for the due process to be followed. Fabio is a man who lives and breathes football. We wish him well. We started several months ago to restructure our football operations, and last week announced the appointment of Scott Munn as CFO to head up all the footballing departments. We shall continue to strengthen our football functions over the coming months. So that was the statement from the club, and that is what Daniel Levy had to say about it. Funnily enough, Daniel Levy said a lot more about Fabio than he did about Antonio Conte going out the door. But we'll get your opinion on it in a second. But there's a couple more headlines I just wanted to read out from Kilpatrick and Sammy Mockbell. And Dan Kilpatrick says that Spurs are planning to replace Paratici with an external candidate who will report into the incoming chief football officer, Scott Munn. Paratici's ban and departure has come as Tottenham are attempting to convince Harry Kane to remain at the club and preparing for an overhaul of the squad in the summer. Where have I heard that one before? And Sammy Mockbell says that Tottenham performance director Greta Steinson and director of football and administration governance Rebecca Capelhorn have taken the responsibilities of the vacated Paratici in the short term. Daniel Levy will look to replace Paratici and find a new director of football rather than promote within. And Matt Law just says that Paratici was the one that did advise Daniel Levy to promote Christian Stellini as the interim head coach in what was one of his last acts as director of football. So Paratici is gone now. That bit is signed, sealed and delivered. Does that mean we are going to see the talks of Maurizio Pochettino intensify? I mean, that remains to be seen. But what's your initial thoughts on the whole topic?
Yeah, look, it's a complete mess. It was always going to end this way. We knew that the likelihood, considering all the information that we had, was that this appeal was probably going to be rejected. It seems as though he was the biggest offender, to be honest, out of everyone. So it makes the most sense that his appeal wasn't going to be upheld. Was upheld. And I think it's now time to draw a line under this and try and move on, because the longer this was going on, I'm happy that it's happened at this point rather than down the line later on in the season, because I think the sooner we can draw a line under this, the better, and we can really start this managerial search now, and maybe we can put a plan in place, or we can convince managers what the strategy is moving forward from Spurs. I do think that again, we're still probably going to need a director of football in before we can really, I think serious managers are our first choices, take us seriously. If we want to really go for like a Nagelsmann or someone like that. I do think that we're going to have a director of football in place. So we're going to have that search started immediately. But hopefully Steinson and can maybe step up. Yeah, maybe he can step up in the meantime. But it is his vision of the strategy of the footballing side going to be the same as a new director of football? So again, it's like, let's say Steinson does the interview. You know, is he going to say one thing and then we bring in a new director of football and it's a different direction? You know what I mean? They're going to want to mold it in their own image. Obviously, I think Scott Munn is going to be very involved in these negotiations. From what we understand, it seems as though he's already started work unofficially, albeit he'd only officially starts on in June. So that's not too far away at this point anyway.
We did hear though he started already, haven't we?
Yes, I'm saying, yeah,
he's to Holland, speaking to Arnie Slot apparently.
Apparently, him and Levy both went to Holland, so maybe we'll hear more about that later date. There's no indication he's like a leading candidate yet, but there's clearly maybe tentative discussions at the moment. Obviously, they got knocked out of the Europa League last week, so maybe that would accelerate things. But I think Paratici overall, I think you can say recruitment-wise, he's probably done a decent job. I wouldn't say it's outstanding. I wouldn't say it's disaster. I think it's more good than bad. But I think where his legacy really probably lies is on the managerial search, where it was just he was part of a disastrous managerial search, which led to Nuno, and then we ended up getting Antonio Conte, and he was out after 18 months. So I think from that point of view, it didn't go so well. I think obviously it's a disaster that we've got this whole director of football through the door, someone who's done this job at a high level for many years, and we kind of couldn't, and it's kind of ended after less than 2 years, a bit like our managerial recruitment. And it's just, we've done so much restructuring, so much work, and it's a lot of it's going to have to be thrown out now, or going to have to be rethought of because of this this outcome. So that's really difficult to get your head around, and I'm sure that's why the hierarchy were clinging on to keeping him, because of all the work that's gone into making Paratici work. So I don't have any names in my head who I want as new director of football, apart from people who I know from the past. So we're going to have to do extensive research and to hopefully bring in a guy who's more suited. But hopefully the new person really understands, because I feel like Fabio didn't understand maybe what it was to be director of football of a club like Tottenham, and what it had to take, in my opinion, because I think he thought it'd be similar to what he was doing at Juventus, like in terms of the manager anyway. Hopefully the new guy understands we need someone, a progressive manager who's going to be have Tottenham at their forefront and not think Tottenham's beneath them and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like Fabio maybe didn't quite get that right. And hopefully the new guy comes with the remit of, we want to play attractive football, we want to bring in more younger players, we want to build something more enjoyable to watch. And I think Fabio wasn't so concentrated on that. He was just concentrated on winning, and that's fine. But we didn't. He was
concentrated on bringing in young players and lowering the age of the squad, and I think he did a pretty good job at that. And I would say that if you're looking back at his time at Tottenham, are we looking back at it? He's done a good job or a bad job. I think it was always a long-term project for Fabio.
Yeah.
And that's the case. I mean, you're never going to see the labours of his work in to the fullest extent in such a short period of time. And I think that he brought in a good caliber of player here for the most part. But I just feel like it was more of a scattergun approach of bringing in players in different positions, as opposed to actually identifying key targets in key positions. That's what the problem was for me. It didn't seem like too much planning went into it, to be honest. It just felt like we were just buying good players here and there in all sorts of different positions.
Yeah, no, but it wasn't also like, we had literally, before Paratici came in, there was that whole thing from Levy about the Spurs DNA. We want to get back to the Spurs DNA, and then Paratici comes in, and I don't know if it's his fault or not, or whether he didn't get that remit or not from Levy. But I felt like even with the recruitment, and especially with managers, it wasn't geared towards bringing that Spurs DNA back. That didn't seem part of his remit. He didn't seem like he was even considering that in his recruitment with players or managers. So hopefully the new guy, hopefully that's part of his remit, to really bring back an enjoyable style of football and more technical players and that kind of stuff. So we'll have to wait and see. But look, I think it's significant for Tottenham, this news, and I'm hoping we can now move forward from it.
Yeah, and in terms of moving forward, right? Like we talk about the manager search. You spoke about before about Greta Steinson heading up, maybe taking on interviews for the new manager and stuff like that. But in my opinion, it just doesn't make sense for us to go for that new manager first. Surely we need to go with the director of football and for him to head up that manager search.
100%, I agree. It seems as though Scott Munn is involved at the moment. That's what it seems. But 100%, I agree. I think it's imperative as soon as possible. Obviously, you're going to have to, again, go through this whole due diligence search, all this kind of stuff for a director of football. Clearly, Paratici is someone he had in mind for a long time. So I'm guessing he'd done his research over many years. So now that's gone. He's going to have to go back to the drawing board. I'm hoping that since Paratici has been going for all this, he's been kind of getting names of other people who he might like to, getting a list of names he might like to interview for this role, knowing that eventually Paratici is probably going to have to leave. If they've been doing it for managers before they've left, I don't see why they couldn't have done that for Paratici. Draw up a list of names of director of football.
I just got a feeling that they were just burying their heads in the sand and hoping everything was going to be okay in this situation.
Yeah, that's what a lot of journalists were saying. So if that's true, then we're going to have to. I'm guessing they're starting from scratch when it comes to getting a new director of football, if that's the model they want to go down, which I think it is. But I completely agree. That is imperative when we're talking about bringing a new manager into Tottenham who has the full belief that they can be a success here. They want to know the direction, the strategy this club is going, and we're only going to know that answer until we've signed a replacement for Paratici. And then there's a collaboration from the hierarchy to the director of football down to the manager. Without that director of football, you can't sign a manager, then bring a director of football in after, and then that could all change. You could have different ideas. You want a consistent strategy throughout the club, and we're not going to have that until a director of football appointed by Scott Munn is there. And I'm hoping it's Scott Munn appointing him and not Levy.
Yeah, well, that definitely remains to be seen. How many times have we heard Levy employing these people, and then we just hear after the transfer window shuts that Levy's been taking hold of this, Levy's been taking hold of that. The guy is a complete control freak, and I don't, at the moment and in the future, I just don't see how any fan can think that Levy is going to step away from the footballing side with what we've seen in the past couple of years.
But this Scott Munn role is a new role, isn't it?
Yeah.
So hopefully,
you can create as many roles as you want.
We said the same thing about Paratici. It's a new thing, and hopefully that's a step in the right direction. And then in the end, Levy did still got too involved, even with Paratici there.
Exactly.
But hopefully with Scott Munn and a director, that's even more separation.
2 layers to Levy, but he'll still be micromanaging. You know it.
Yeah.
You just know it. So look, that's the situation right now. Another shit show, to be honest, for Tottenham Hotspur. Paratici has resigned from his post at Tottenham, so that's even more uncertainty coming into the club today. I guess we'll have to wait and see who.
Well, in a way, it's more
which
certain.
direction the club go.
It's more certainty because at least it's
Well,
done.
guess,
You know what I mean? Because when we're in this limbo, that was even worse. But now we know he's gone. We can move forward from it now. We can see what. Now we can actually start putting in place actions to kind of move away from that. And that's the most important thing, I guess.
Yeah, but look, Fabio, I think he brought in good players here. The caliber of player to come in was good. Like you mentioned before, the DNA and going back to the Tottenham DNA was a big letdown from him. But I think that he's leaving the club squad in a better state than when it came here.
Yeah, and a bit like Comoli is. I remember when we had Comoli, everyone thought he was rubbish, and then later down the line, a lot of the players that he signed, who initially maybe weren't so good, turned out to be quite good players. And the same maybe for Paratici, not necessarily saying they're rubbish now, but like people like Udogie, Sarr, Spence, Gil. Maybe it's not going to be until 2-3 years' time when they really start to develop and become good players in the squad. We say, okay, he actually did a really good job bringing these players in. We might not know it until a couple of years' time.
And let's be real, right? Before Fabio, right, in terms of the previous 5 years or whatever in transfer windows, how many players did we actually buy that could get into our first team? Not very many. Heung-min Son. You could probably count them on one hand how many players that we signed in that period before Fabio that that could break into that first team week in, week out. And now, since he's come in, we've brought in quite a number of players that can break into this first team week in, week out. The likes of Romero, Kulusevski, Bentancur, potentially Bissouma. Perisic has been playing week in, week out pretty much all season. So you got to say that the caliber of player has been a lot better under him coming in than it has been previously.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think especially compared to like the summer, if you compare like last summer to the summer of where we spent probably a similar amount of money to the summer under
Højbjerg
Jose.
was one as well, yeah.
Yeah, we had like Højbjerg, but like, you know, Roden, an aging Bale. We had, you know, Matt Doherty, like these players that you just don't want them anywhere. Like you don't want them in the squad. So I think like it's better than that. Like the recruitment has gotten better under Paratici, 100%, and I agree that I'm happy that as well he's gone for really young stars who have potential to explode in the future, which maybe we were lacking a bit. We didn't really have anyone coming through where you thought this guy's got a massive future and he's really young right now. So I think that was a part of his remit as well. So I agree. I think the squad is in a better place now than it was when he took over. 100%, I agree with that. But under a new manager now, I feel like under a new manager, especially one who's going to be more offensive and maybe more possession based, it's gonna take quite a bit of especially in the back line and midfield, it could take quite a lot of change to get right what we want from this squad. And unfortunately, that's just reality. And where I think if Paratici was still here, maybe he could have helped with that. But look, we're going to need a new director of football now, and they're going to have their own vision.
Yeah, and whatever people want to say on him, we're never really going to know like what his end goal and end job will have looked like, to be honest. So I think you just got to say he made mistakes. He did good work here as well. So just be on your merry way.
You got to remember as well how, like, when he came in, how desperate we were for someone like him, and so how much had to be done, like, to get us up to a level. And it was, as you say, he's only gone in less than 2 years. So it was always very difficult for him to get everything he wanted done in that short space of time before this came to roost. So I think it'd be harsh to completely judge him just on these 2 years, because a director of football is very different from a manager. It's much more of a long-term thing where it's not like you're just based on results week in, week out. And Spurs were in a complete disarray from the footballing side.
Still are.
And we are now, but like we were even much more when he took over, weren't we? So. And now the director of football now might have an easier job, not easier job like overall, but in terms of like recruitment and wise and stuff like that, maybe there's more structure there than there was when Paratici took over.
All right, well, that is the situation with Fabio at the moment. He has left the club.